Hi, y'all come on in the back. Welcome, good morning. We're so glad you're here. Thank you for saying good morning on this beautiful day. Welcome to the second annual Higher Call Conference at Grace Community Church. That's where you are if you are from out of town. We've got people from Austin, Texas, Louisiana, Memphis, East Tennessee, Atlanta, Illinois. Did I miss any states or cities? Oh, Nashville. That's not on my list, so thank you. We are so glad that you're here. We're so thankful to Grace Community Church for having us. And I think the big question for those of you who were not here last year is, why are we here? So there's a quote that says, "The God of the Bible is not a passive being, but a dynamic entrepreneur. Work was God's idea first, and therefore it matters to him, so it should matter to us," and it does matter to us. Those of us on the Higher Call steering team have really big expectations for today. We are hopeful that you feel inspired to connect your work and your faith in the daily grind. We are hopeful that you learn something that will change how you approach your work, and we're hopeful that you feel less alone as you journey through your work. Community is important. There is an old African proverb that David brought to us last year that I'm stealing from him that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go together, no, it's not. If you want to go far, go together. Sorry. We are really thankful to Grace Community Church. Not only did Grace open their doors, we are in such a beautiful building, but Grace does an amazing job supporting work and faith in their ministry. So we have our founding pastor, of Grace Community Church, Scott Patty, who is also my dad. I was going to make a hair joke, but I used all of them last year, so I will not.
You can make a lot of jokes about that. Good to see everybody. Welcome. We are grateful that you're here and honored to open the door to have this conference here. We at our church, as a part of our church theology and understanding of things, certainly agree and affirm with Higher Call that the marketplace is a God-given place to bring glory to Him. The marketplace is a God-given place for people like you to work, exercise your gifts, use your creativity, your ingenuity to provide not only for yourselves but for people. The marketplace is the best place for God to provide what we need. The marketplace is a wonderful place for people to hear the gospel as you go with your lives, are salt and light in the world, and so many other wonderful things that God provides through work. And so we're grateful to partner with you by opening the door, grateful for what's going to be ahead. And I want to start with a word of prayer so we can pray over this conference and ask the Lord's blessings. Father, thank you for the grace that is in Christ Jesus. Thank you for the gift of work, the gift of the creation, the gift of every resource that comes with creation that we can take up and use for good, use for human flourishing, use for provision, use, Father, for the stewardship of these resources, use for ministry as Christians with a special calling, a higher calling on our lives to honor Christ, most of all to bring you glory. So today, in all of the breakout sessions and all the talks, all the plenary sessions, Lord, would you guide those who are leading? Would you open the minds and the hearts, the ears of every person here? Would you give fresh vision, fresh encouragement for the work that we do every single day in this world, all to your glory. In Christ's name, amen.
Thanks, Pop. You can call him Scott or Papa. He goes by both. We have a lot of industries represented today. I'm going to read them off, and if I miss one, you just shout it out at me. We've got real estate companies, retail, banking and finance, investment, construction, healthcare, service and hospitality, HR, manufacturing, architecture, design, nonprofit, marketing, the pet industry, venture capital, insurance, accounting, auto, and a lot of crazy entrepreneurs. Did I miss anybody's industry? Farming. Thank you, Mr. Ron. I appreciate it. So welcome, all the industries. It's really fun to see just lots of spaces in the marketplace represented. Today could not happen without our corporate sponsors, so I want to say a special thank you to each of them. ServPro, Complete Health Partners, Helton Real Estate, Principal HR, Pinnacle Financial Partners, C12 of Middle Tennessee, Corporate Chaplains, and the Riverstone Group. Because of their support, we're able to offer you some books that are in your higher call bags. So everybody should have gotten a bag. If not, there are more in the back. In your bag is a book called Giving Jesus Away, Smart Brevity, Trust and Inspire, and Leaders Eat Last. We hope that you are able to put these to good use and then maybe give some away. Find somebody in your world that could benefit from these. If you didn't join us last year, David Atchison's book we also gave away last year. There is a copy of that at the welcome desk that you're welcome to grab if you don't already have one. There are a couple other thank yous that I want to say this morning. Jay and Christy Smith, where are you? Jay and Christy Smith, they are responsible for the beautiful design, promotions, marketing, and your program. So thank you, Jay and Christy. Elaine Atchison and her team, they are responsible for all the beautiful hospitality work that you've put into today. Thank you for feeding us. We appreciate it. And there's a special thank you to somebody who probably will not raise her hand when I say her name, but Simone Poff. Raise your hand, Simone. Simone is the detail queen. She makes sure that today runs. She organizes our team meetings before this, and she runs David's life. So that's huge. That is, wow. You are pretty awesome. Thank you so much, Simone. All right. Nope, I'm not going to bump that yet. We are going to run through the program. So you did get an email from Simone with a copy of, let's get it out here, where you are, a map, so you know where you are. You are in the worship hall right now. If you exit these doors, you would be in the gathering hall. We'll meet there for lunch, and the restrooms, one side of the restrooms are to the left of the gathering hall, men's and women's restrooms. After this, we will have a quick break. David's going to speak. We're going to have a quick break, and then we'll go into our workshops. So workshops will be held. You have 2 sets of workshops you can choose. One will be in the chapel, and one will be upstairs in the loft in each hour. And then we will meet in the gathering hall for lunch, and we will go into our open forum. Open forum is something new this year. And when David started to bring up the idea of an open forum, he pitched it to us as the combination of an open square and speed dating. So that's going to be fun. There are a list of questions in your program that you can go ahead and take a look at. They are stimulating questions that maybe we don't discuss very much. Maybe we don't have an idea how we would answer them if we were to be asked them, but it's going to be a fun time to just dialogue openly within some groups. I think you have a color on the back of your name tag that will help you figure out where you're going in the open forum. After the open forum, we will be back here for a large group session. We have a really special guest that will be joining David. Mike Marinick will be here at 1:45 to just talk a little bit about his life and his work. So we're very excited about that. We have a member of the steering team, Rob Dixon. Rob is going to go ahead and highlight one of the organizations that we really respect in the area. Got your other partner. Perfect. Rob's going to tell us a little bit about C12, and I will let you take it from there.
All right. Thank you. So good to see you all today. Just worlds colliding. This is great. Exciting to share with you all about C12. So I am I joined this year, and it's been an amazing experience for me, and we're grateful to have them here as a partner. And this is Andrew Finney, great friend, and he's also my chair. So we'll tell you a little bit about C12. Can you tell us a little bit about C12 for those that don't know what it is?
Yeah, really briefly. So C12 is the largest Christian peer advisory and coaching organization in the country, and now just this year surpassed 4,000 members, actually internationally as well. C12 exists as franchises all over the country. So in Middle Tennessee, I'm a part of C12 of Middle Tennessee, and there are 9 C12 chairs, and we lead C12 forums of Christian business owners and CEOs. And we meet monthly for a full day. And the exchange, the conversations, the curriculum, we have MBA level but digestible curriculum that is applicable in your business. And we have each member gives a core business presentation, one member out of the group each month, and that is incredibly valuable. They receive feedback from their peers in a environment of confidentiality but vulnerability. So it's a place where when it's typically lonely at the top, there's a place to have the conversations that you need to with other people under the umbrella of Christ. And so that's C12 in a nutshell. There are a lot of other pieces to it, but that's really the core piece of it. And then we meet monthly for individual one-on-one coaching.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to share with you all just briefly, my experience was Andrew kind of pulled a fast one on me because I've known about C12 for a decade, or more. A lot of you have heard of it before, and I had always said I don't have time. I'm busy. I have a lot of people already speaking into my work self, if you will. I have resources. And Andrew had been a close friend, quasi-family. His sister is married to my brother. And so, but when he was my coach, my unofficial coach, I was like, just practice on me. I need all the help I can get. And did that for a few years. And then he said, hey, I'm thinking about joining C12. Have you heard of it? I was like, as a matter of fact, I have. And so I joined in May of this year, and now I'm one of the probably numerous C12 members that say, I should have done this a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But the Lord's timing is perfect, and it's been an amazing experience for me. The reason I did it was because I need to invest in me as a business owner. I want to pour into my team. My number one responsibility as a business owner is to invest in my team. And so we daily just give and pour into our teams. They're our mission field. And, God calls us to our teams. And so I was like, man, I need some more pouring into me. And this has been that. And also, so the curriculum, well, let me go back and say the other piece was accountability for me, to just be able to stand up in front of a group of owners and leaders each month and just say, here's where I'm at in my in my finances, my personal finances, my health and fitness, there's a balance wheel we do. So the accountability there to know that I got to come up and share that in front of people that care about me. We're developing a community that's really special. That we just kind of get each other because we're all business owners, right? And so, but the other piece that was really more than I'd even hoped for is the curriculum. It's so impactful, and I don't know how it happens other than the hand of the Lord, where it's exactly what I need to hear at that exact moment. And the biggest challenge I have is taking the 5 or 6 pages of notes that I take each month and coming back and going, how am I going to implement? I need to pull 2 or 3 things out of this and implement it. And so I can't say enough good about it. And so I'm honored to be able to share that with you all this morning. You want to offer anything else?
Yes, it's so in Middle Tennessee, we span all the way from Dixon all the way over to Cookeville and the northern and southern borders of the state. Our Middle Tennessee franchise, of which there's 9, we also have Southern Kentucky, and it reaches up into Louisville and Lexington. So it's very mission-minded, just the part of becoming a chair. So I have a business background. I'm a pharmacist that hasn't been a pharmacist for about 8 years. That's my trade that I trained in, but
standing 2 feet up, stand up here,
right up here. So it's but what I found a passion for was business. That's what God put in my heart to do, and then to opportunity to serve others in that. So very mission-minded organization. That's the goal is to support, equip, and encourage Christian CEOs and owners. And so that's why for me it was a great fit, and have the opportunity to serve owners like Rob.
And how can we find out more?
Yeah, so C12 of Middle Tennessee, you can go online. There are several of us. We have several of our chairs that are here today. So yeah, we've got a wonderful team. Just amazing, godly leaders that have earned their stripes in business and want to serve other CEOs and owners. So.
All right. Well, thanks for being here and thanks for sponsoring today, y'all.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Andrew. We will be hearing from another organization as well this afternoon that we are excited about. Okay. This is always my favorite part. I get to introduce our speaker for the morning. David Atchison is the founder and principal of the Riverstone Group, a development and advisory firm here in Brentwood. He has been a leader in the real estate industry and development industry for well over 3 decades. And in 1997, David founded Higher Call Ministries, and he has challenged thousands of business people in the marketplace through mentorship, training, and writing. He also won the wife lottery. Elaine and David have been married for how many years? 43. That was your test. You got it. 43 years, and they have 3 children and a grandchild. One of their children is here. David, come on up. Before David takes over, we're going to talk about something new in Higher Call. Higher Call huddles. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned over the years is that we all have so many things going on in our life. The one thing we don't need is some new program or some new thing to start. And so I like to do things that are organic. And so the thing about Higher Call huddles is it's really super simple. Basically finding just people that maybe are in your same industry, or maybe y'all have similar types of work, and you can share your faith, you can share your business, and it's just being able to spend time together. And so we're going to have some information that will come out on the website next week. There'll be a discussion guide. So anybody, it's not super structured, but we have some guidelines to really help that happen.
Okay, so one thing that I know about you, because I also get to work with David, is that your ideas are great. How do you know this is going to work?
Well, last year, there's 3 other people, I believe they're here today, but I won't mention their names, but we are in the same industry. We share a lot of the same challenges, and so we decided we'd get together for have lunch once a month. Now, we changed our name, which everybody's free to do. We're JAG. We have JAG luncheons because those letters represent our last names. And so we get together, and it's just, sometimes we'll just talk about what's going on in our life. Sometimes we'll have, hey, I'm dealing with this issue. How do you handle that? Our last time we got together, one of the guys has got a big decision to make, big business decision to make. And so he had actually told the people he was working with, hey, I can't make any commitments till I meet with my group. And so that was kind of cool. And so we sat there. He asked us for a little extra time. He laid out everything. We turned around and became like his advisory board and started asking him questions and pumping him and making suggestions. And then we had this beautiful time at the end. We prayed for him. And we all need other people. We need to be able to share that community. And so it's a great opportunity to do something that's really relevant to what we do every day in our businesses, but also it's real personal. Yeah. So,
how does somebody get involved or start a huddle?
You might want to start one today. There might be some people here today that you connect with. It could be just someone that you like spending time with, and you just be intentional about it and do it.
Awesome.
And set it up, and make it your own thing, schedule it your own way.
Cool.
It's really organic.
Good. And there will be some discussion questions on the website next week, on the Higher Call website next week.
There will be
So
a
hopefully
discussion guide.
discussion guide. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Are you trying
It's okay.
to
You
get
got
out
a lot
your
of stuff
way?
to
I do.
get there. Yeah. Grab. So good to see y'all this morning. What? Yeah, I forgot about that. It's my phone. You know what? I'm just going to go with this one. How about that? So let me just say, it's such an encouragement to see y'all here today. Many years ago, I learned a lesson, and it was something that took me a while to pick up on, but there's I discovered there's a really unique dynamic that occurs when men and women can connect around their faith and their work, their business. Obviously, followers of Christ are familiar with coming together around their faith in local churches and other faith-based gatherings. And then business leaders and professionals are used to, doing trade shows and industry networking events. But to be able to connect around our faith and our business in the same setting, there's something really special about that. So today, we're doing that, and I hope you're encouraged. I hope you meet some people and maybe even reconnect with people you know. I know that our theme today is building trust, connection, and purpose in your business. So I've heard people use this line, trust is the new currency in our marketplace today. Most industries are so competitive that the key to gaining an advantage is to be able to develop trust with your customers and clients. Well, while trust is more essential than ever, it can also be very elusive. Business leaders and companies must earn and hold the trust of others in the midst of what I call a sometimes cynical marketplace. You also may be becoming more aware of how isolated our marketplace can be. Working from anywhere has its advantages, no doubt, but it hasn't made connection any easier. Despite the power of our technology, where everyone is one click away, loneliness seems to be at an all-time high. Why is that? You see, whether you're part of a large company, a small business, whether you're a solo entrepreneur, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, the marketplace can be a lonely place. This reality feeds our hunger for connection, and not just any kind of connection, meaningful connection. And then what about purpose? Regardless of industry, companies far and wide are trying to grab a hold of a compelling why that will inspire their team and their clients. Purpose is foundational. Just doing business to make a living isn't enough anymore, and it shouldn't be. Meaningful purpose can become the inexhaustible fuel for your business. Purpose is powerful because it leads to a deeper pull toward excellence and gives us the reason when perseverance is needed. So trust, connection, and purpose, these are the focal points of our conference today. Where do we turn? Where do we go for the knowledge we need? Where do we turn to for the insight, for the inspiration? Well, I can tell you we have an inexhaustible array of material at our fingertips. We've got business knowledge and motivation, and we have inspiration. We can go to business stories, and we have all these books and podcasts. We have great role models. We have business leaders that we can learn from. All these resources are so helpful. In fact, if you're not a consumer of good books and podcasts, I encourage you to become one today. And while you're connecting with people, let me give you 2 questions that you might want to add to your conversation today. It's real simple. Number 1, what are you reading these days? Ask that question. Make notes. And then number 2, what is your favorite podcast? So much just excellent resources at our fingertips. But what I found in my life and journey, and what I found in my business journey specifically, is that there's a source that provides more than knowledge, more than insight and inspiration. At least for me, there's a source that creates and establishes a foundation from which all other worthy business insight that I've ever gleaned has come from. It's built upon. The source I refer to is the Bible. This is God's revelation to us. And in it, he reveals himself on terms we can understand and relate to. For instance, how many names do you have? I've got 4. There's my first name, David. There's my middle name. That's a W initial. There's my last name, Atchison, and then I have a nickname. I'm Atch. I've been called Atch since I've been in college. So I've got 4 names. I don't know how many you have, but if we look in the Word, we find that God has over 200 names describing his attributes, describing his character. And so this morning, I want to share 2 of my favorites that might be interesting to you. So In Hebrews 11:10, when referring to Abraham, it says, "For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God." This is the image of God as an architect and a builder. We don't normally think of him that way. Maybe we should. He's the architect who has designed a city with eternal foundations. He's the builder as well. And I want to tell you, just over the last 10 years, having been somewhat involved with all the growth and the transformation in Nashville, all the things that have happened, I'm keenly aware of how many people have been involved in playing crucial roles of planning and designing and building and organizing. And that's only one city. God is the architect and builder of the universe. I hope you understand just how relevant the Bible is to our work and to our business. This is not just a book for pastors and missionaries. For instance, did you know that the very first person identified in the Bible as being filled with the Spirit was an architect? There you go. Bezalel's credentials are laid out for us in Exodus 34. Have you thought about the woman described in Proverbs 31, who's often identified as the ideal wife? Upon closer examination, I think what we find is she's much more than just a great catch for her husband. She was an industrious woman. She was a legitimate entrepreneur. And what I love is she was a shrewd real estate investor. In the scripture, we draw from the biblical narrative, we see all kinds of, we have wealth managers, there are lawyers, there are accountants, there are architects, there are designers, there are builders, there are merchants, there are retailers, there are fabric manufacturers, there's stonemasons, there's musicians, there's artists, and much, much more. Today, what we want to do is we want to draw from a biblical narrative of Nehemiah. Now, Nehemiah was a very intriguing person who took on a sort of a challenging project. But so we can put this in terms that we can relate to today, if we were writing a bio for Nehemiah for the Nashville Business Journal, I don't know, it might go something like this. Nehemiah had great leadership and management skills, which served him well as he became the general contractor over a huge government rehabilitation project. He overcame sabotage and international materials acquisition nightmares, and he had to rely on an inadequate labor force. He also resisted profiteering and under-the-table deals in order to bring the project in ahead of schedule and on budget. Later, he became the governor and led in the broader rebuilding efforts in his city. It's a powerful story. Nehemiah is somebody we should pay attention to. But his story is part of a much bigger story. Nehemiah was part of God's redemptive story. And so here's the thing, you and I, we all have stories. Hopefully today you have a chance to share a little of your story, but we need to be reminded as well that we are part of a bigger story as well. So I want to set the historical context for Nehemiah, because the events we're going to look at today took place in 445 BC, which is at the front end of what historians refer to as the Second Temple period. The temple was being rebuilt in Jerusalem and the people of God were returning from exile. Now, the nation of Israel had been exiled for 300 years. First taken captive by Babylon, then later the Persian Empire overtook Babylon as the most powerful nation in the world. From that point, the Persians controlled Israel's exile. But God in his sovereignty had intervened during this long period of time, and he used Cyrus the Great, the king of Persia, and then all of his successors that followed him to allow the people of God to return to Jerusalem so they could rebuild the city and rebuild the temple. This took place over a span of 100 years. And it's within that span of history that the story of Nehemiah unfolds. Now, Nehemiah was stationed in Susa, which is the capital of Persia, where he is serving as a cupbearer to the king. But we need to keep this perspective. What we learn from the scriptures is that the exile was initiated by God because of the rebellion and disobedience of his people. But even in the midst of that period of discipline in the life of God's people, they were still called to represent his name. Listen to what God told his people through a prophet named Jeremiah. seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. These people are called to pray for the city they're in. Didn't matter how pagan it was. Pray for that city. For its welfare, in its welfare, you will find your welfare. So God had this plan. And so these people were exiled. And in Nehemiah's time, you can just imagine everywhere you turn, there's brokenness. It's hard to see all the things that they're having to see. And here we are today in 2024, trying to grow our profession, trying to run our businesses. We're trying to be focused and optimistic. We're trying to be positive, and yet everywhere we turn, there's brokenness and sadness, anxiety. There's chaos. There's adversity. But what we learn from Nehemiah is that we actually need to see ourselves as exiles who are called to be God's representatives. Now, let me unpack this a minute. Because even though we live in a nation where we are free to come and go, we are free to start new businesses, we are free to really pour in and invest into the city's economy wherever we are. Even though we aren't exiles as Americans, we are exiles as followers of Christ. In order to have that perspective, we have to see the bigger picture. We have to understand that there is an end game. Now, as the cupbearer to the king, Nehemiah served in one of the most influential roles in the kingdom. The cupbearer had the audience of the king. He had the opportunity to develop a relationship, a very close relationship, which gave Nehemiah the opportunity to build trust with the king. Now, the account begins with him receiving news from Jerusalem from his brother. In Nehemiah 1:2, it says, "And I asked them concerning the Jews who escaped, who survived the exile, and concerning Jerusalem. And they said to me, the remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down. Its gates are destroyed by fire." When the walls of a city in that time and history were broken down, there was no protection. There was no opportunity for a city to flourish. So it tells us in verse 4 that when Nehemiah heard the news, it affected him deeply. It says he heard these words. He sat down, he wept, and he mourned for days. This is where we learn something about the heart and soul of Nehemiah. He's clearly distraught over the condition of the city and its people. It's deeply affected him. And it makes me ask the question, reluctantly, but is there anything outside of our personal lives, outside of our personal businesses that we deeply care about? Or have we become so self-absorbed in our own worlds that our world has become very small? I think the thing that often causes us to just move on, the thing that causes us to barely notice stuff outside our world, is that we think, what can I possibly do about it? Did you ever feel that way? It's like there's so much going on in the world, but what can I do? I'm just me. I'm just one person. I think we have to really put ourselves in Nehemiah's place. And I think he was probably asking that question. What could I possibly do? Well, let's look at some of his circumstances. First of all, he had a huge geographical barrier. Susa is close to 800 miles from Jerusalem. Okay, that would be like traveling from Nashville to Washington, D.C. without planes or cars. Think about that one. That's a long way. That's a big barrier. And then think about the lack of resources. You have to ask, where's Nehemiah going to find all of the resources, all the materials to get the money to be able to build and put together the rebuilding of these walls? Big problem. And then you have to ask the question about, he's got standing responsibilities. I mean, the guy's got a job. He's responsible for carrying out his duties every day. So do you see that he's got some major obstacles? What could he possibly do? Well, Nehemiah responds to these circumstances, and the way he does it tells us a great deal about his heart and his soul. What he actually does is he turns to God. I know what you're thinking. Well, of course he does. It's the Bible. No, this is Nehemiah. He's got a real job. He's a real person in a real time in history. He's facing all kinds of issues just to be able to navigate his own life. And yet, he turns to God. You know, we know from this account of Nehemiah a couple of things about him. First of all, he's an extremely gifted leader. The guy's got great business acumen. He is a make it happen kind of guy. He wouldn't have been able to pull off all he did if he wasn't gifted and skilled as a businessman. So I can only imagine how I might have responded. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I pulled together some friends, trusted advisors. Maybe we start talking about ideas, what could be done. Maybe we come up with some kind of plan. I mean, I would most certainly realize I needed to act quickly and courageously. And I'm sure I would have thrown up some prayers along the way. But not Nehemiah. It's amazing to me, a guy this gifted. He wasn't relying on his skills or his strategies. No, the word tells us that he prayed and he fasted and he waited on God's timing. And then he waited a little longer. In fact, we're told in verse 1 that he received the news in the month of Chislev. That's our November and December. And then he never even spoke or had this conversation with the king until the month of Nisan, which is our March and April. That's 4 months. 4 months. He prays and waits. I'm sure he's preparing and thinking about things. What we see here is that, and by the way, 4 months. Do you want to know what happens to me when I hear about an opportunity or a property that might be available that I think is important? Let me put it to you this way. I can get you an offer inside of 24 hours. I can. Nehemiah had that instincts to do something, but he waited and he prayed and he trusted God. Now let's be clear, humanly speaking, this whole masterminded plan that leads to the king first approving Nehemiah to take leave of his position, and then the king's willingness to provide his authority and his resources in order to make it happen. This does not occur unless the king, Artaxerxes, has an incredible amount of trust in Nehemiah. I mean, he trusted him. Isn't that what we all want? To be able to earn the trust of clients and customers and associates and colleagues? Of course it is. I can't think of a time in my culture, in my marketplace during my lifetime when trust is more difficult to find. Skepticism, cynicism, distrust, doubt abound. Who can you really count on? Really? This is why marketplace heroes and hero companies are so treasured and sought after. The trusted ones are the exceptions who stand out like shining stars. What we see is that Nehemiah held the trust of King Artaxerxes, but he put all of his trust in God. It sounds like a really simple formula. It's not a formula. It's a trust that he had in God. And listen, I'm going to say something, and this is going to sound extremely judgmental, and I don't intend it to sound this way, but I need to say this. Over the course of more than 40 years of experiences in the marketplace, I have heard many, many men and women boldly profess their faith and trust in God, and yet they proved to be untrustworthy in their business dealings. I say that with great humility because I got to be honest. There's many times when my talk supersedes my walk. And don't get me wrong, when I hear professing followers of Christ claiming one thing and doing another thing, it's upsetting. But can I tell you what the cold hard reality is? There is not one person in this room who is 100% trustworthy 100% of the time. No one. So when we approach this idea of being trustworthy, we must do so with great humility. Let's remember that the architect of the universe is also the designer of our souls, and he has hardwired us with this capacity and this desire to trust. He created us with a need to trust. The only problem we have is we sometimes misplace that trust in things that are more visible, things that are more familiar, like ourselves, our company, our bank accounts, our resources, our talents, our personalities. But one thing that Nehemiah does is he reminds us that we can trust in an invisible, sovereign God, even when we are attempting something very earthly and very tangible, like rebuilding the walls of a city, or like doing your work every day. That faith and trust in God provided Nehemiah with the fuel and the strength needed for him to pursue such an ambitious task. Our trust in God is what transforms us into men and women who can be trusted. So I wish I could present to you a really strategic and effective plan. We all want that, right? We need an action plan. How do we become people and businesses who can be trusted? Okay, here's the plan. I don't have one. Isn't that just like us? Give me an action plan. I need it now. Okay, here's a plan. Trust will be earned by doing what you say you're going to do and doing it over and over and over for a long period of time. There's a verse in Luke 16:10. It says, one who is faithful in a very little thing is faithful also in much. So we start with little things. And perhaps this is a place when we talk about, you know what our plan would be now? It's like we create a marketing scheme to tell everybody how trusted we can be as a company, right? That'll work. Maybe we need a little bit of, Proverbs 27, which says, do not boast about tomorrow because you don't know what a day may bring. Let another praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips. I believe our marketplace needs a lot less boasting and a whole lot more doing, especially from those of us who are followers of Christ. Now, when Nehemiah reaches Jerusalem, he immediately encounters opposition. There were some who didn't want to see the city prosper and flourish. So he arrives, and after he'd been there 3 days, we're told that he secretly goes out one night and he inspects the walls. He needed to see what he's up against. He needed to assess what was going on in order to pull this project off of rebuilding the walls, which was the most important part of the city's infrastructure. Now, do me a favor. Please do not cast Nehemiah as this pseudo-spiritual mystic who only prayed. That's not who he was. He was a godly man who trusted God and he prayed. But Nehemiah was shrewd. He was a strategic thinker. I mean, he knew how to count the cost, factor in the supplies, the resources to rebuild the broken down wall. He was a visionary. He was a mobilizer. He had the skills for organizing work and pulling people together to get it done and getting the best out of them. Listen to this. In Nehemiah 2, it says, then I went up in the night by the valley and inspected the wall, and I turned back and entered by the valley gate, and so returned. And the officials did not know where I'd gone or what I was doing. And I had not told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the rest who were to do the work. Then I said to them, pulls the people together, you see the trouble we're in, how Jerusalem lies in ruins with its gates burned. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem that we may no longer suffer derision. And I told them of the hand of my God, how it had been upon me for good. And also the words that the king had spoken to me. And they said, let us rise up and build. So they strengthened the hands for the good work. Man, I love those pronouns. You know what the pronouns of our culture is, our marketplace? It's me, it's I. This is what I can do. Here, it's we and us. Connection comes from identifying with others. These people, Nehemiah is all about, let's study Nehemiah. He's a great leader. Let's do all that. But can we just for a minute put Nehemiah over here and let's think about the people that were there. They shared the same city. They shared the same ecosystem. They shared the same common struggles and challenges. They shared the same need for a living God. Ultimately, they had a shared experience of seeing their work and their sacrifice and their risk bring glory to God. The results were amazing. Despite the extreme opposition, despite all the limitations, this group of people banded together and accomplished something remarkable. They rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem in 52 days. 52 days. Are you kidding me? They restored dignity and protection back to the city. They laid the groundwork to begin the revival of this economic vitality of the city. And then chapter 3 is so fascinating. If you haven't looked at Nehemiah 3, take a look at it. What we have is like a roster of names. All these names, they're recorded. These are historical documents. They've been recorded for the work they did. And all these people participated in the rebuilding of the wall. And they're described by their occupation and their families. And they're each assigned a place on the wall. Everyone had a piece of the wall. And there's this phrase that's repeated over and over. Look at verse 2 in chapter 3. It says, and next to him, the men of Jericho built him. And next to them, Zachar, the son of Imri, built. There's a phrase there. You see it? Next to him. This phrase, and next to him, is repeated 16 times in this chapter. You see, they weren't alone. It was an entire community affair. The shopkeepers, the tradesmen, the merchants, the business professionals, even the spiritual leaders in the city, they all came together to work. And halfway through the project, Nehemiah 4:6 says, so we built the wall, and all the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. When you pull people together, when they're assigned a responsibility, everybody has a piece of the wall. These people had a vision. They caught the vision and they were working. I mean, they built the wall in 52 days. My company can't get contractors organized on the site to even start within 52 days. It's amazing. I think followers of Christ in the marketplace today have the same kind of potential to have the bond and the connection that the shopkeepers and the tradesmen and the business community experienced in Jerusalem 2,500 years ago. I not only think it's possible, I think it's necessary. I think it's the way God intends us to go about our business. We need each other. Let me say that again. I don't care if you're a solo entrepreneur, whether you work in a big company, we need each other. Every industry represented in this room has been built by a set of interdependent companies that are supplying products or services necessary to provide more products and services necessary to accomplish and do whatever they do for the community. Do you recognize the plan devised by the architect of the universe? Do you see this plan in our marketplace today? See, God the Father and God the Son and God the Holy Spirit created the universe in community. And now, you and I are called to build and grow our businesses in community. From the garden to 2024, God master plan an ecosystem where needs are met and problems are solved through ingenuity, hard work, products, and services provided by people. We call this business, right? Sometimes we view our need for connection in the marketplace as one of those necessary steps like, okay, I guess I need this person to help me achieve this. I need this person to make that connection. And before you know it, people become commodities and stepping stones on our way to getting what we want. I think when we do this, when we think that way, we really miss something that God has for us that's special. You see, we need to see our need for cooperation as an opportunity for meaningful connection, greater focus, and more impactful results. By the way, quick word, chase one rabbit today. Those of us who are in positions of leadership in our businesses could stand to learn a lesson or two from Nehemiah and his leadership. He was a great example of servant leadership. The problem in our marketplace today is that many desire the position of leadership, but are unwilling to assume the posture of a servant. True leadership is taking the initiative for the benefit of others. True leadership is serving the ones we lead. So Nehemiah saw the bigger picture. The rebuilding the walls was certainly at the center of his activity, but there's something larger at play here. Don't miss it. Nehemiah 6:15 says, so the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month, Elul, in 52 days. And by the way, do you realize that Nehemiah spent 4 months praying? And then they built the wall in 52 days. Interesting. And when all the enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem, for they perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God. Man, that's an incredible statement. Rebuilding the walls and doing so efficiently and in record time was seen as such an astounding accomplishment that all the surrounding nations immediately assumed that it could only be done with the help of God. In other words, God was greatly glorified through the rebuilding of the walls. And let me ask you if there's anything in your business activity, anything over the last couple of years that can be explained as this never would have happened without the help and intervention of God. I don't know about you, but I want more of that. I get a little taste of it. I want more of that. Nehemiah and the people who rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem were fueled with this greater purpose. They had a cause that was bigger than their own personal cause. And you know, I'm encouraged by seeing advances in this area. People are more purposeful today. And that's something that's encouraged me and encouraged our company. We've adopted a deeper understanding of our purpose. We don't want to just do real estate deals. We do want to do real estate deals. And we don't want to just develop property. We do want to develop property. But we've connected with a bigger view of what we believe God has called us to do, which is to create places where individuals and companies can thrive and flourish. We believe this is the way God has called us to glorify Him through our business. We actually talked about this at last year's conference. If you want to go back and listen to the recording, we're talking about making God connections in our daily business. I believe we've all been called to the highest purpose of all, and that is to be glory reflectors. Glory reflectors in the marketplace. Because each one of us have been assigned a piece of the wall. Every industry has been given a section of the wall. And every company and person in that industry has been assigned to a piece of that section of the wall. We each have our own small corners of the ecosystem in our cities. But what if we took a different mindset? What if instead of just trying to build do our thing, we actually intentionally build our businesses as a representation of the glory of God to the nations? I'm talking about city within the city. I'm talking about building the city of God within the city of man. I'm talking about what Jesus refers to in the New Testament as building His kingdom. What if we become purposeful, intentional, trustworthy, connected glory reflectors in our cities and in our industries? We said earlier that Nehemiah's story is part of a bigger story, and each of our stories are part of a larger story. The story of God's redemption is the story of a gracious, loving, sovereign God who sent His Son to be the sacrifice for a world full of rebels and untrustworthy people. We've been called to be the representatives of His redemption in the marketplace. So it's interesting to me that the prophet Isaiah predicted the exile period as well as the rebuilding of the temple and the city a couple of 100 years before it actually happened. It's pretty cool. Talk about some strong evidence for the reliability of Scripture. It's amazing. But what all of us need to remember today is that God has used His prophets and His word to predict a time in our future, something that hasn't happened yet. You see, the Scriptures tell us that though we began in a garden, we're going to end up in a city. Even as we seek to represent His redemption and glory in the fallen marketplace, we need to remember God's promise of a new heaven and a new earth where we will live and work in a city of perfection. Wow. So what do we do in the meantime? We reflect His character and His redemption. We run our businesses with excellence, with grace, and we build out the ecosystems in our cities. You see, we live and work around people who have no idea of this future city or even what it's about. No idea, where people that we work around every day have no idea what it means to experience the grace of God and His forgiveness. No idea what it means to be loved unconditionally by a holy God. People around us that have no idea that it's possible to be in a real relationship with the living Christ. No idea what it means to be filled with the hope of God so that our future is filled with promise and not dread. I'm a movie guy. I love movies. One of the things I like to do is when a big movie's coming out, I like to watch the trailers. Like my wife, I drive her crazy. Sometimes we're on Netflix and I could spend 30 minutes just watching like trailers. What does a trailer do? You watch a trailer and all of a sudden it helps you, it kind of gives you a glimpse of what the movie's going to be about. You kind of get excited about it and it prepares you for it. So I'm just thinking, all these people that are around us have no clue about that future. I think maybe God's calling us to kind of be like movie trailers for them. Maybe they can catch a glimpse of what this is all about, to the glory of God. My call to us is to be glory reflectors in the way we do our work. Father, thank you for our time. We're excited about the day ahead of us. We want to give us just a real open, teachable spirit. Help us to make good connections today. And we look forward to all the things that you're going to accomplish. In Christ's name, amen.